And in this speech, he refers a few times to the Promised One, a veiled reference to the 12th Imam, and then concluded the speech by praying that Allah would hasten the coming of this Promised One, the 12th Imam.
The ultimate promise of all divine religions will be fulfilled with the emergence of a perfect human being.
I thought, I hope people are listening, and I hope people will take the time to try and understand what he just said.
Few listened, even fewer understood.
You know, over the last few years, I've been invited to meet with people at the CIA, Homeland Security, Pentagon, White House, Congress. Yet, it's amazing to me that our number one national security threat as Americans is from Iran, and yet so few leaders in Washington, aside from around the world, understand the end times theology of the leaders of Iran. It's as though it's not even being investigated, it's not even being processed.
One of the biggest problems for intelligence analysis is dealing with the issue of religion. First of all, everybody tends to mirror when they look at other cultures and other civilizations. They assume that people are logical, just like they are. Or they'll say, you know what, we'll be able to deter a nuclear Iran the same way the United States deterred the Soviet Union. But the Iranian leadership, which believes in the arrival of the Mahdi, are not godless communists. They have a whole different worldview. And therefore, those who look at Iran without understanding the foundations of the Shiite faith and Iranian religion are going to make a very big mistake in dealing with this very problematic challenge for all of us.
They're telling us exactly what they want to do. They don't have a hidden agenda. They're not lying. They feel so bold as to state it to the world what they want to do. We are refusing to listen.
This end times theology is not only what he believes, but it's why he's putting his, Ahmadinejad is putting his foot to the gas of accelerating Iran's nuclear weapons development program and the ballistic missile development as well. Because once Ahmadinejad is able to acquire nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them, Ahmadinejad could do in about 6 minutes what it took Adolf Hitler nearly 6 years to do, and that is to kill 6 million Jews.
If you really want a barometer of human decency, see how a country treats its own.
State television showed the police beating some protesters.
Because if they have contempt for their own, they certainly will do far worse with others. And I think we've seen manifestations of that over and over again.
Hitler wrote a book, Mein Kampf, saying exactly what he wanted to do. And people said, oh, he's a crazy lunatic. He doesn't really mean it.
And we would say, why do you say he doesn't mean it? He wrote it, he preached it, and later on he practiced it. Why would we in any way question the authenticity of the sentiment?
Ahmadinejad is doing the same thing.
Evil, unchecked, is a prelude for genocide. And to misunderstand the nature and threat of evil is to risk being blindsided by it.
Iran has yet to build a nuclear weapon. My administration will seek engagement with Iran based on mutual interests and mutual respect. We believe in dialogue.
Today I want to extend my very best wishes to all who are celebrating Nowruz around the world. This holiday is both an ancient ritual and a moment of renewal, and I hope that you enjoy this special time of year with friends and family. So in this season of new beginnings, I would like to speak clearly to Iran's leaders. We have serious differences that have grown over time. My administration is now committed to diplomacy that addresses the full range of issues before us and to pursuing constructive ties among the United States, Iran, and the international community. This process will not be advanced by threats. We seek instead engagement that is honest and grounded in mutual respect. Thank you, and Eid-e-Shoma Mubarak.
So, what happens next? How long will the world wait?
If he can't get the world to squeeze them through sanctions, to convince them diplomatically and economically to back off on the development of this weapons program, then what else can Benjamin Netanyahu do? He cannot stand by and let them have the first strike. So I think we're coming to a point where Netanyahu is, if we are not successful, I think Netanyahu is going to have to strike them.
If the United States or other countries such as Israel were to take action, I think that obviously that action would have to occur before Iran announces its breakout technology of perfecting the enrichment cycle, or announcing that it has a nuclear weapon. Certainly a military option is not a desirable option. Without a doubt, a nuclear-armed Iran is a much more undesirable outcome than military preparations.
It's saying, the leaders are saying they're going to attack certain countries, the United States and Israel, but they have designs on Saudi Arabia. They want to control what they believe are the holy sites of Mecca and Medina. They want control of Iraq. They want to control Lebanon. They want to control Syria. They have a vision ultimately of controlling the world. So where they strike first, nobody knows. That's why nobody's safe if Iran has nuclear weapons.
There are people looking at Iran, they go, these guys just want to be left alone. They are building up all this military capability so the United States won't undermine their regime, won't try and topple the Ayatollah and his ministers in the Iranian government. But they are not a status quo regime. They are a revolutionary regime. But the general goal is to be the dominant power across the Middle East and over the oil resources of the industrial world.
Time is running out. Most experts believe that Iran is within a year of having multiple nuclear weapons. Some believe they already possess them. Most agree, once that threshold is crossed, the world will never be the same.
If Ahmadinejad starts a nuclear war in the Middle East, that will be the beginning of the end times. And he's very likely to do that if he gets the nuclear weapons. Because there's no downside for him. He becomes a martyr, he goes straight to heaven and gets 72 virgins. Again, this is so outside a normal person's thinking that the tendency is to say, nobody can believe this. You already have in Hezbollah and Hamas armies that are backed by Iran that act on these beliefs.
People are not aware of the importance of the moment we're facing. I mean, this is the greatest supporter of international terror, of international Islamic terror worldwide. It is a country whose leadership believes in all kinds of apocalyptic scenarios of the end of days and talks about it all the time. And these guys are about to get nuclear weapons. It is extremely important that the West firmly prevent this from happening, because the amount of chaos that will go on in the world will be hard to imagine.
People tell me all the time, we don't know what to believe. What should we believe? We hear so many things. And I tell them, believe those who say they want to kill you, because they usually follow through.
If you're familiar with the Bible, specifically its scripture concerning the end times, the story of the return of the apocalyptic 12th Imam may sound hauntingly familiar. Revelations talks about a returning Messiah, Jesus Christ, the battle of Armageddon, the fight between good and evil, the judgment of unbelievers, and ultimately, a new heaven and earth.
When you look at Islamic eschatology, that's their belief regarding the last days, you have what I call an anti-parallel, which is to say that when you look at the narrative that the Bible lays out for the last days, it's identical to what Islam teaches, except Islam has literally taken the whole story and flipped it on its head. It's taken those individuals in the biblical narrative that are the followers of God, and it's turned them into the followers of Satan. It's taken those that are aggressive and those that are actually the armies of the Antichrist in the Bible, and it's turned them into the valiant heroes. It is literally an exact reverse that we've been given through the Islamic narrative.
And just as the Christian church is steadfast in their belief of the Bible prophecies, including the return of Christ, the Twelvers are just as devout in the belief of their version. Those who've attended their religious services compare them to a Christian revivalist meeting. with tears streaming down the faces of thousands of men with arms stretched to the heavens, all imploring the return of the Mahdi, or 12th Imam.
All the three major religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, believe in the return or in the coming of a Messiah that is going to bring peace, where peace is going to reign supreme on earth. We do not know the time, we do not know the day, we do not know the hour. In Islam, and especially in Shiite Islam, they believe that they can actively participate as Shiite Muslim in bringing back the Islamic Messiah by creating a catastrophe throughout the world where they can hasten or usher in his return.
When people ask me if I believe we're living in the last days, my answer is yes. Why? Because Jesus and the apostles and the prophets laid out a whole series of things to watch for that would be signs that we're living in the last days. Wars, rumors of wars, the rise of false prophets, false religions, false messiahs, persecution of the believers, earthquakes, natural disasters, famines, rise of lawlessness, crime. And you can pretty much go through that list and go check, 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 check. The Bible is clear that there will be many attempts at the end of history to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. They will all be defeated, but not without great suffering. And as a follower of Jesus Christ, I am praying for the peace of Jerusalem, but I'm also preparing for the certainty of major wars happening in the Middle East in the not too distant future. And that means providing food and clothing and medical supplies, storehousing this stuff, getting ready that Christians would help stand with Israel and our neighbors ahead of whatever major wars are coming next.
My parents were Holocaust survivors. When people would ask them where was God during the Holocaust, they would say, as many have said, where were human beings during the Holocaust? We'd like to think that when people are committed to decency, decency triumphs. Jewish tradition does teach us that there will be a conflict between good and evil, Gog, Magog. You find that in Ezekiel. You find allusions to it in the book of Daniel. And ultimately, good will triumph, and the Messiah will arrive, and we'll see a transformation in the world as we know it. But again, the word mitzvah is very important in our tradition because it says, I have responsibilities to you, to others, on this day. So while it's important to have, a view of the next world, that does not relieve us of our responsibility to do in this world. We cannot live with a nuclear Iran. That has been echoed by many people of all different political backgrounds, all different religious backgrounds. Now, what does that mean? If we can't live with them, then we have to do something to make sure that they don't live with us.
In the time we've been working on this documentary, Iran, with Russia's help, has put a nuclear power plant online, introduced a drone bomber capable of delivering a ballistic missile payload, announced advances in its long-range ballistic missile program, and continued to march unabated towards nuclear weapons capability. By the time you watch this, hopefully, it won't be too late.
Laura, I understand you're on embankment on the river, just steps away from where the protests are now. Earlier we saw you in the heart of London. The protests have marched towards Westminster and the Houses of Parliament. Tell me, what do you see there at the moment?
Well, you're right, Rory. I'm about 300 metres away from the main protest. You might be able to see remnants of it just behind me here. The main protest is taking place right in front of the Houses of Parliament where police have cordoned the protesters into an area. It's a little bit scrappy there at the moment. There's a sort of small outbreaks of violence, protesters trying to break away from the main group. And the police, for a large part, letting them. They're also making their way up just over here towards Trafalgar Square.
Let's take you overseas now to Greece.